Good afternoon. I would like to discuss with you all the controversial issue regarding immigration in sanctuary cities. Catherine Seinel was a 32-year-old woman who was shot in the back by an undocumented immigrant after his release on July 1, 2015 in San Francisco while walking on the beach with her father. The undocumented immigrant was Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, a 45-year-old Mexican national who went to San Francisco because of its sanctuary laws that made it easier for immigrants without documentation to not be caught and to not be deported if caught. According to the LA Times on July 24, 2015, Lopez Sanchez had been convicted of 7 felonies and had been deported 5 times before his arrest. Catherine's story is one of many tragedies, but it was her story that intensified the battle of sanctuary cities in this ongoing immigration debate. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, San Francisco is one of 340 cities and counties across the nation that have sanctuary policies and laws that prevent the local communities from identifying undocumented immigrants to the federal government. Steve Salvi, the founder of Ohio Jobs and Justice PAC, explained that these communities have ignored the Illegal Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, which was passed by the United States Congress in 1996. This act required that local governments cooperate with the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, which I will refer to as the ICE in this speech. To help control criminal and illegal activity by undocumented immigrants, cities need to be held accountable if they are going to violate federal law by calling themselves a sanctuary city. According to the Washington Post on October 20, 2015, Senator David Vitter, a Republican from Louisiana, proposed the bill Stop Sanctuary Policies and Protect Americans Act. This act was designed to block state or local governments from enacting or continuing sanctuary laws and policies, especially in regards to undocumented immigrants arrested and convicted for criminal offenses. The bill was passed by the House in July after Catherine's death, but it did not meet the 60 votes needed to be passed by the Senate. Because of specific legal powers and local employment licensing laws, which I will go into later on about, states should be the only local governments that are able to have the freedom to claim sanctuary. With that, I propose that Senator Vitter's bill be modified to only disabling local governments, and that Congress passes the Stop Sanctuary Policies and Protect Americans Act with this modification so that cities are restrained from using these sanctuary laws or policies. This issue is important because the negative effects that come from these sanctuary cities' laws and policies outweigh the positive ones that citizens who support the sanctuary laws argue. Also, you'll be seeing this in the upcoming presidential election season, and it's largely covered in the media, so it's a big current event. With that, by examining exactly how cities violate federal government's law regarding immigration, and by discussing the unjust benefits that they receive from sanctuary cities, I will prove that my proposed policy's urgency and importance throughout the speech. My first argument is that the sanctuary cities violate the federal government's Illegal Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act passed in 1996 by Congress. The Obama administration supports these sanctuary cities, which is problematic. According to the Homeland Security Secretary, Jeb Johnson, the Obama administration has been quick to file lawsuits against any state or local government that attempts to crack down on these policies. However, they turn their eye when cities openly violate the federal law, helping these undocumented immigrants hide their identities. States have the power to make certain sanctuary laws, and they're not violating the Constitution, but there is a difference between the powers that they do have and the powers that the federal government has. Susan Price, a principal analysis for the Office of Legislative Research, explains that difference between the states and the federal government's powers regarding immigration. First, states have local employment licensing laws, in which federal government allows states to independently regulate the employment of undocumented immigrants through licensing and other similar laws. However, secondly, Price explains the federal government ultimately holds the power regarding immigration. Most of state immigration laws are preempted by federal law, and Congress ruled that federal government has exclusive and broad power to regulate immigration. The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, Article 6, also preempts state laws that interfere with or are contrary to federal law. So basically what it's saying is that even though states have these powers in some of their laws to help undocumented immigrants, and it's their decision, ultimately the federal government's law is the one that rules overall and is supreme. But this is problematic because these sanctuary policy controversy is just adding to the chaos that's already there in the complicated matter of undocumented immigration in America. States, and especially cities and other local governments, are intentionally dishonoring our national law that is made to help monitor and control the safety of the American people. My second argument against sanctuary cities focuses on the unjust benefits undocumented immigrants receive from sanctuary laws and policies, and I want to especially focus on the thousands of criminal offenders that are undocumented immigrants. There are many undocumented immigrants who are seeking help, they're seeking a better life, and they don't violate the law. But unfortunately, there are an overwhelming amount of undocumented immigrants who are criminal offenders, according to Jessica Vogan, the Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies. According to an updated report prepared by the ICE for Congress, between January 1st and September 30th of 2014, local sanctuaries released 9,295 undocumented offenders that the ICE was seeking to deport. 62% of these offenders had significant prior criminal histories or other public safety concerns. Sanctuary cities offer help to those undocumented immigrants who do truly need to be saved, but it is too much of a risk to allow cities to get away with violating federal law and not report undocumented immigrants because they are allowing criminals to be released and ultimately threatening the public. These sanctuary policies are safe havens for these undocumented immigrants who are seeking to run away from the law. Sanctuary policies inhibit the ability of law enforcement officers to accurately identify foreign nationals, making it more difficult to uncover their activities. Yes, criminal activities happen multiple times every day of every year. They happen by American citizens, legal immigrants, and undocumented immigrants. But if they're legal, at least we can track them and we can give them the punishment they deserve. But without documentation, we cannot track these criminal offenses, and therefore we're increasing the threat to the public safety due to these sanctuary laws and policies. My final purpose of this speech is to review common arguments of sanctuary city supporters. First, crackdowns in sanctuary cities will not damage the trust between the communities and the government or impair the safety of communities across the country. According to the Washington Times on October 20, 2015, the Office of Management and Budget said the Obama administration, along with supporters of sanctuary cities, believe that any interference with sanctuary cities will lead to mistrust between communities and state and local law enforcement agencies. And a common concern is also that it will raise the safety of these communities, that it's safer to have these immigration laws through the sanctuary policies. However, that trust and safety supporters want to ensure in our country is stripped away when undocumented immigrants have access to legal rights that only documented immigrants and citizens are legally entitled to. And it's violated when criminal offenders cause harm to the public and get away with it because their identities are protected through these sanctuary cities policies. According to the Washington Post on July 8, 2015, another argument sanctuary city supporters make is that the wait time for undocumented immigrants, especially those seeking asylum who deserve the opportunity to be heard in court, is years long, and immigration courts order out thousands of immigrants regardless. Between 2011 and 2013 alone, immigration courts ordered about 414,650 people out of the country. This is unfortunate for the people who are seeking asylum and need the help and a better life, but it does not excuse sanctuary cities allowing undocumented immigrants to violate the federal law, and especially not those who are criminal offenders. These arguments lead to my conclusion that America needs a strong immigration structure to protect citizens. My policy will provide that structure. Since states have the power to allow certain sanctuary laws, I advocate for the importance of stopping sanctuary cities from making these policies and laws to protect undocumented immigrants. There are too many cities in a country as large as America, which makes it too easy for undocumented immigrants to seek a safe haven in one community if they are prevented refuge in another. States have the right and the proper structure to determine sanctuary for undocumented immigrants, and the decision should be made by the state not the local governments. With that, Senator David Viter's bill, Stop Sanctuary Policies and Protect Americans Act, should be passed by Congress in regards to only blocking local governments from releasing criminal, illegal offenders who are causing so much preventable harm in American communities. It is time that our communities respect national law and the ICE, who are trying to monitor and maintain safe immigration in America for the better good of the American people. Time is also limited. The Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies, Jessica Vogan, stressed that undocumented immigration is growing larger each year. And in addition, global crises like the refugee crisis in the Middle East present the need for immediate, safe, and legal immigration solutions in a country that faces global threat like the United States. With undocumented immigration rising and global crises calling for even more immigration policies, a strong immigration structure is urgently called for. In critical times and in regards to being humane, undocumented immigrants do need help and do deserve the chance to have a better life. However, remaining in America legally is not the right way to do it, and it's not an exception. With the risk of not being able to monitor undocumented immigrants' activity and moral standards of life, the safety and structure of American communities is at stake. We cannot afford any more tragic deaths like Catherine's and many others from a preventable cause. We need to implement and enforce communities to abide by the law and find legal ways to help undocumented immigrants. This policy needs to be enacted so America can start to prevent some tragedies from happening and can focus on finding legal ways to help the undocumented immigrants who will share the moral values our American people stand to live by. That's who we want in our country. There's a legal way to do it, and we cannot have the risk of other stories like Catherine's. Thank you.